Well, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Kenny. Today I'm hosting a special guest, Public Service Commissioner Tim Echols. And I met Tim about 4 years ago at a building trades meeting. You came and spoke to us. And what's interesting is one of the narratives that I hear a lot from 613 members when you're dealing with politics is, hey, why do we predominantly support one party or the other? Why do we always support Democrats? Why don't we support Republicans? And so that question's always asked, and it's a simple concept. We support the people who support us. So I can remember 4 years ago, Tim came to the building trades, and one of the things that was just so interesting that intrigued us was, number one, he was there with labor, hanging out with us and introducing himself and us getting to know him. But two, the knowledge that you have in our industry. I mean, just across the board was just enamoring and awesome. And it was really a good time. And then another thing, the main thing that I liked that really stuck out was Tim's willingness, your willingness to serve the people of Georgia and to truly serve, not just say, hey, I'm going to do this or do that. You're hands-on. You're out in the state. You're doing everything you can to represent Georgians, and so that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, your people are different. They're building things. They're finishing things. I mean, not too far from the studio, my family had a car auction and a house moving business, and they were regularly moving houses, setting them up, completing them, and giving them or selling them to people that needed a house. And my uncle was the bricklayer, for that. My granddad was, the guy that came up with, the concept of putting the steel under the houses and towing them with an auto car. So I come from a family that values finishing stuff and doing stuff, and they really weren't afraid to work with their hands. I mean, they put me to work at the car auction buffing cars. And that was also a task that when you finished it, it was better than when you started. So I do value the work that your people do. And I felt like, man, what can I do to allow y'all to do more, to allow your brotherhood to be able to be successful at this and be able to stay in our state, be able to support their families. And I came to y'all for that advice, and we strategized and we came up with some things and we implemented that. And as a result, we got some things done, and I'm excited about continuing to work with you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how does 18-year-old Tim Echols get to where you are today? What's that journey look like from the time you got out of high school? Tell us what that looks like to go into a public service commission and getting into the role of service.
Yeah, I grew up on the south side, so we lived in Riverdale. Before that, in Morrow, had a little dairy farm down in McDonough. So the south side, for folks that have never lived there, it's different than living in a country club community in Roswell, where my wife grew up. So she lived a more protected life. Ours was more of a blue collar experience. I mean, my dad graduated from Georgia, but he still went into the family business, which was owning a car wash, owning the auction, owning the house moving business, raising cows, working in a dairy farm, all of that stuff. That's outside work. That's sweaty work. Yeah. That's getting up early work. And he taught me those values. And that's why I had a little peanut business when I was 11 years old. Go on the farmer's market, buying 50-pound bags of peanuts, parching them, selling them to car dealers. All of that kind of stuff gives you an appreciation for hard work. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to get a college degree. Truett Cathy had been influential in my life. He told me, go to college, get a degree. And so I went to Georgia. I got my degree. I met my wife there, and I went to work in the car business and then into the ministry, and then an opportunity opened for me to run for the commission. And I wound up running against 3 other Republicans, beating them, and then getting in the commission, and I've been there for 13 years.
That's awesome. So that's cool, too. That's a piece of information. I didn't know that Truett Cathy played such a major role in your career and the decisions you made throughout your life. So coming back to the Public Service Commissioner, what, in your mind, with your experience and knowledge, is the best mixture of power generation?
it really kind of changes because these federal rules change. Right now, we're about 50% natural gas. We were at one time even more than 50% coal. We're about 24% nuclear energy. We've got about 8% solar, and we've got a little bit of hydro. But Kenny, my concern is that fossil fuels are continuing to get the hammer put down on them, and that eventually we're going to need to convert these fossil plants over to nuclear plants. And I think that's where your guys come in because they're very interested in being a part of that transition. It's just we've learned lessons from Vogtle. It was hard. We need a federal backstop in the future to protect us against some kind of bankruptcy or some kind of overruns. But I think that's where the country's going. It's not going to happen in 10 years or even 20, but I really believe that probably in 50 years, Georgia's fossil plants are mostly closed, if not all closed, and it's been replaced by nuclear reactors.
Okay. All right. That being said, what the heck happened in Texas a couple years ago? How does that happen?
Yeah, it was just it was not a perfect storm, but it was a perfect storm to shut everything down because, that weekend it was getting cold in Texas and everybody turned up their gas in Texas at home. And Texas is not used to really super cold temperatures. And so as folks began to use that gas, it did put the supply of gas at those Texas gas plants in jeopardy, and because they don't have what's called firm gas, they're interruptible, and being interruptible is good. It's cheaper, but when you really need it, well, you can't get it. There were some issues with the coal piles that were frozen. The one nuclear plant tripped. Wind turbine blades that weren't winterized, that didn't have the heaters in them, well, they weren't working. The solar panels had snow on them. When you add up all of that with the fact that everybody's cold, you started having the grid, roll off. And that then rolled off the whole water thing. And we've seen recently in Atlanta what happens when you don't have water and can't use water. It's almost bad as not having power. But they had both. And so over 100 people died. Every member of the PSC got fired out there, the Texas PUC. Wow. ERCOT directors lost their job. It was a major catastrophe. Fortunately, we haven't had that happen in Georgia, but I don't want to look down on Texas because, it could happen here, but we've got a very high reserve margin. You guys are doing gold-plated maintenance at our plants, keeping them things pristine, and that's what we got to have. We got to have the stuff working, and you can't underestimate the importance of preventive maintenance, and that's what your folks do. And we have to have it. We have to pay for it. We have to keep it out there, even though nobody really knows it and appreciates it. We know it, and we don't want this grid shutting down in Georgia.
Yeah. Well, cool. So diversification you don't think that had much play to do with it? They're not heavy in one generation sector than the other, and that you don't think that had anything to do with it?
I really think it's their deregulated system that was the problem because independent power producers bid in daily out there, and we don't have that. Georgia Power owns our plants, and Georgia Power is in control of the preventive maintenance and winterizing, and they get recovery for that. So if Georgia Power spends a lot of money, let's say at Plant Bowen in Cartersville, they're going to get recovery for that. They're not an independent power producer going, well, I think we'll just ignore all this preventive maintenance because, we're a little tight. They're not having to do that, and that helps Georgia be able to have this reliable grid.
Okay. So speaking of your knowledge, I hear you're going to speak somewhere about a new AP 1000 unit globally. You're going to head out and you're a keynote speaker. Where do we rank on our nuclear generation globally in the United States of America? Where do we rank with that?
Well, Plant Vogtle with those 4 units is the largest clean energy site in America. So it's substantial. What we're doing out there, over 4,300 megawatts, just surpassing Palo Verde out west. So that's a great place to be in. I think you'll see us build some more over the next 10 or 15 years, or at least start them within the next. My guess is, if we can get the federal backstop and the protection, I would think we might get started within 3 or 4 years.
Okay. So globally, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little more clear. You may, not to put you on the spot, but are we, say if you were looking at worldwide, are we more nuclear generation power plants mostly here, or are there other countries that are advanced more than us that have a larger percentage of nuclear power that they're generating?
Per capita, France would have more, and their percentage is 70%. But the U.S. has about 98 reactors, so we've got more. But we're a giant country too, and we're for sure. So we're way bigger than France. But when you look at the concentration in what France is doing, because they've got recycling, because they fabricate their own MOX fuel, I really think France is the gold standard in the world for this, and that's really who I want to be more like.
All right, that's awesome. So, like on my staff here, 3 of us have electrical vehicles that we drive. The market's growing. We also offer EVITP training for a classification that you can get for the electrical vehicle infrastructure program to install chargers across the state. We work millions of man hours at 613 in data centers, in the construction of these data centers, mainly because I think you got a lot of AI capabilities coming online, and a lot of people are switching to AI. How, in your opinion, will we meet the demand for power? Are we going to be able to meet the demand and generate enough power here? It just say in the Southeast. I know with Vogtle that helped us out tremendously.
Well, the proof's in the pudding, right? So we just went in and uncharacteristically popped open our IRP, did an update, and added 6,600 megawatts of power to accommodate about 8 data centers.
So IRP, elaborate on that so the members know.
Yeah, that's an integrated resource plan. It's a strategic plan that we do so that we're just not spontaneously, doing energy planning. We plan for 20 years, right? And every 3 years we update that. In this case, we had to update it sooner because we had knocking on our door all of these data centers. Mm-hmm. And we approved essentially the equivalent of 6 Vogtle reactors. And that's made up of some combustion turbines that are going to be built, Plant Yates. And I think
8, we met yesterday, 8, 9, and 10. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think IBEW is going to be involved with that. We're grabbing some of Mississippi's capacity. We're leasing a gas plant from down in Santa Rosa, down near the Gulf. So we're scrambling to do whatever we need to do so that we can continue to say yes to business. So the governor even vetoed a bill that was going to remove some of the tax credit for data centers. And the reason he could do that is because we had already, done our update to make sure we have the power. So no one could say we don't have the power. We have it. Now, regarding the electric cars, I really think that IBEW needs to be more involved with this because we've got a lot of shoddy chargers out there that are installed by people that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think we need to do whatever it takes to engage your folks in charger deployment and O&M. See, this is a problem. We have broken chargers, and Kenny, I drive an EV, your folks drive an EV, and when you drive up to a charger and you need a charge and it's broken, it's got a bag over it, or it's not working, that's discouraging. And what it causes you to do is go, you know what? I think I'm just going to get a hybrid next time. And you don't want the EV. My wife is there. She's going, you know what? I've driven this car with a plug for a long time. Just give me something I don't have to charge in the wild. And I mean, it's a legitimate concern. Some of these chargers are, they're messy. There's no security lighting. I don't want my wife out there at 9 o'clock at night coming back from her counseling job trying to charge a car. It's just unsafe.
For sure. Yeah.
That's so we gotta have better standards on this, and we gotta have folks that know what they're doing installing them.
Yeah, I was glad that the governor vetoed that bill because we tracked that House Bill 1192 pretty close because, like I said, we had a lot of data centers here. I would say roughly 3 million man hours a year we're working in construction on these data centers. Large data center, south of the city. We got them here off of Jefferson Street. I mean, we got it out in Covington. So they're everywhere.
More coming.
Yeah, and more's coming. And I was kind of trying to tie it together, and I just couldn't figure out when we were in session, why are we trying to stifle and stop this and stifle the growth of these data centers? Why are we pulling the rug out from under them? But hindsight, looking at it, to be safe, which was in my mind now was a good play. We hadn't met with the Public Service Commission yet. Mm-hmm. We hadn't approved Yates yet. Mm-hmm. So 8, 9, and 10 wasn't a go. Mm-hmm. So I think that it worked out pretty good. Then when we went and testified, you guys approved Yates, did everything y'all do on your end. Georgia Power is able to get the permits to roll out 8, 9, and 10. Then he had the information, I'm assuming. I don't know. I may be totally off base. I may be in left field. But then Yates came on, so he had the capability to go ahead and veto because the power is there.
That's exactly right. He had 2 weeks after we approved that to contemplate what he was going to do. And, I mean, it was the right decision. I mean, if we can say yes to business, we need to say yes. And
100%.
I mean, you're in a state, obviously, that we're not afraid to add more fossil. I took a lot of heat for adding those gas units over there, but we must have the reliable grid. We sell that. We sell this grid to get people to come here.
Right?
It's very diverse.
Yeah, we got to be. I feel like. Well, how about this? As a Bulldog grad, what are we going to do this year? National champions. Come on.
We had that great run. We were robbed really last year. So I really think that we are poised to come back. I mean, Alabama's always lurking there, and we play them in the regular season this year as a game. So probably whoever wins that game is going to wind up in the SEC championship. So obviously you've just got to keep going. But I think people have been dancing on our grave out there. They've been trashing Georgia. They wanted us to lose, and they were hating us. And so the committee, I think did us wrong, in the end. But that's just politics in college football.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Tim, it's always a pleasure, friend. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you doing this, and appreciate what you do for our state, great state of Georgia.
Yeah, folks can just find me at timechols.com. I have a podcast as well, Energy Matters with Commissioner Echols, and we've had many union guests on our show. You can just search for it anywhere you get your podcast, Energy Matters with Commissioner Echols. Thanks.
Thank you.